I'll tell you what, I gotta find out whoever did that PowerPoint and just totally fire them. That was me, by the way. I totally jacked that up. Sorry, folks.
You're
In case you're
fired.
wondering why the words didn't match the songs, that you can blame your pastor on that.
You're human, it's all right.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, before we move into the message tonight, now I touched on this kind of last week. I kind of gave the Cliff Note version of it, but special praise report. Mindy is able to join us tonight. Sorry, Rose. The real Mindy actually was able to join us tonight. And I'd like to come on up and turn the mic over to her, and she's going to give us kind of an update on what's going on with little Gabriel.
I can talk louder?
Yeah, just try to talk loud and
Okay. Well, a couple of you people know what was going on. We were expecting our first great-grandchild. And before he was born, probably about 2 or 3 months before he was born, the doctor said that he had fluid on his brain. And they said it kept getting worse, and that when they did an MRI on him, he only had a brain stem and no brain. Well, he was born 2 weeks ago Tuesday, and he just seems like a perfectly healthy little guy. He eats and sleeps and moves all around and laughs and screeches, and the doctors still say that there could be complications, that there could be weakness in his limbs. They don't know if he's going to walk or if he's going to talk, but I have faith, and I believe God brought him this far, and God's not going to fail him now. And when he was born, sonogram, his head was like this, and then the back went out like this. But when he was born, his head was perfectly shaped, and they cleaned him up and took him to the nursery, and my daughter said, if there was something wrong with him, wouldn't they have put him in a NICU or something? I said, probably, but I believe there's nothing wrong with him. And he's just, not even 2 weeks, and he's just sucking down bottles like crazy, and he's gaining weight already. So I believe that he's going to be fine. And I just thank God for everybody's prayers, and that he's as healthy as he is. Thanks.
well, it's like I told you folks last week. We serve a mighty living God,
Amen.
one that answers prayer. In case you're wondering, as we were doing the praise songs, I kind of flipped through them real quick. That was actually the song "God's Not Dead." Ron doesn't have that kind of range in his voice. Joe does it pretty well, but ain't that the truth? God ain't dead.
Amen.
He is more than alive. So, all right. I'd like to say welcome to first-timers again, second-timers, third-timers, multiple-timers, all the folks watching at home, YouTube, Facebook, and our homepage, www.heavensedgechurch.org.
Good job.
I'd like to say welcome you guys out. All right, now some of you guys know our backstory here on the HEMCC, how we kind of got started. If you don't, visit the information table back there. There's a sheet back there called Our Story, coincidentally. You can pick it up, read a little bit about it, and kind of get the full version of it. Also, while you're back there, buy some of our cool t-shirts we got going on back there. You see some of the folks wearing them tonight. We sell those for a donation of any amount. Just all the money goes to support our ministry here. Well, I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of it, and I know some of you guys know this already, some of you don't, so just bear with me if you know it. But we started out basically as an idea. You can call it a ministry, you can call it a Bible study, you can call it an outreach, you can whatever you want to call it. But the aim was to, as I said kind of in the announcements, to kind of reach out to the Saturday night bar crowds, the bikers, the metalheads, the rockers, the jokers, the tokers, the midnight smokers, and let people know that Jesus loves you for who you are. He doesn't tell us to clean up your act and come to church. He says, you come to me just like you are, and I will do the work within you. Now, a lot of churches, we tend to forget that idea, and as we say around here, Jesus calls us to be the fishers of men, not the cleaners of fish. And I know there's a lot of churches out there that have kind of forgotten this little bit of wisdom and think that it's our job to tell a person, hey, glad you came to Christ, now go cut your hair, show up every Sunday, give your money as often as you can, cover the tattoos up, and quit listening to the metal music. Well, sorry, but for this pastor, that ain't going to happen. But anyways, we started out as this idea to do this outreach. And like I said, you can call it what you want. You call it a Bible study, call it a ministry, call it an outreach. And we actually started with the support of a couple of churches behind us. And we met with these folks and these pastors, and we pitched the idea to them, and they actually kind of liked what we were going to do until I explained to them how we were going to do it. Mic's not on? Now my mic's on. Okay. Oh, yeah. Now I can hear it myself. All right, so we pitched this idea. I was wondering what this meant. Now I know. We pitched this idea to these other pastors, and we were actually going to use a different facility. One of them had offered to let us use his building because the church I was with at the time didn't have their own building. Another pastor was the church I was with. We were kind of counting on him for support when it came to equipment and things like that. And it was all good until I explained the idea. And I explained to them that, we're going to use kind of more edgy music. We're going to use more of the metal music style, take our cues from Stryper and Cutlass and Pillar and, use that. And then also, too, you see how I'm dressed. Okay, and the first night I preached, I wore an Iron Maiden t-shirt. There's a whole backstory to that, too. I'm not going to get into that. And then there was also the question of whether or not I was qualified personally to lead this kind of ministry. I had done small groups in the past, even worked with teen groups before. I've got 3 years of Bible college under my belt, haven't quite graduated yet. But there's also some issues to division of doctrine. So in the end, what they did was they ended up pulling their support, but they weren't just very gentle about it. They actually said some pretty harsh things that I took very personally. I heard I wasn't qualified. I heard that there's, over and over, there's no way a metal church is going to work. At best, it was a bad idea. At worst, it was blasphemous. And personally, and I'm still not sure whether I should take this one as a compliment or not, but I actually kind of like it. I was told, I don't know, Jim, you might actually be going a little rogue on this one. Hey, that's all right. But, so we modeled ourselves after the FHMCC down in Dayton as far as, how we were going to set up. And we're still, like I said, we're working with the formats and all that. But that's not the point. The point is, I tell you that story about some of the things that I was told, not to shame them, but to tell you this story. Is when we started out, launch night, we spent several weeks promoting the church. We spent several weeks in prayer. I know Shell and I, we fasted regularly for like the month leading up to the launch. And I was so determined, and I used to say, we had like 6 weeks to put this all together. And I used to tell like my staff members, hey, don't worry about it. It's okay. God created the universe in 6 days. He gave me 6 weeks and a couple of musicians. I'm sure we'll do just fine. So launch night comes, and honestly, I think maybe 15 people show up at most. And I knew that most of them who came that night were from out of town and just came for our launch, and we probably wouldn't be seeing them again for a while. But even then, I kind of was like, hey, don't worry about it. We didn't have the big grand opening we were hoping for, but God's a faithful God, and we're going to stay with this. We're going to give God our best. We're going to give Him our all. We're going to work with what we got. As long as we stay faithful, God's going to continue to grow this. And in the first 6-week period, we saw a few people come in and out. I know some of you guys stayed, and I'm very grateful for that. But I never really saw that big explosive opening that we had really hoped for in the beginning. And I'll be honest, as a pastor, that's very discouraging. Especially when you stake so much on it, and you've had these people tell you it's never going to work. In fact, it gets so discouraging that my wife will tell you, Mondays for me are usually a pretty bad day because I get pretty depressed when I look around and I see empty seats, because the reality of it is, And I hate to say this, but we keep it real here. Let's keep it real, is that there is a certain numbers game involved when it comes to doing a church. Now, don't get me wrong in this, okay? Because when I say there's a numbers game involved, the first thing I'm sure most of you thought of was, yeah, more people means more money, means bigger church, means bigger name for the pastor, more reputation, so on and so forth. And that is true for some pastors out there. That's what they do. And I won't deny that that exists. But even for people like myself, whose heart is really in simply preaching the gospel, we give our lives to the church. And as such, it's our heart to really share the gospel. So naturally, you want to share it with as many people as possible, particularly in one city. So even in that sense, it's still kind of a numbers game. So when I didn't see these, explosive numbers, I mean, I think we originally had 80 chairs set up, and like I said, we got 12 people, so I told them next time around, cut it back to 50 so it doesn't look so scarce. It got me depressed after about 4 or 5 weeks. It got me so depressed, and I went down and I talked to a friend of mine. And I was explaining this to him. I was talking about how bad I was feeling about things. And I was really starting to second guess what I was doing. Did God really call me to this? I mean, I should have seen those explosive numbers, because the last thing that I want to do is go back to those other 2 pastors and give them a reason to come back and say, I told you so. They said I wasn't qualified. They said the church will never work. It was wrong. It's a bad idea. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to give him an I told you so. Now, this is what I love about my friend. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. And I respect that. Because I didn't need a sugar-coated, hey, Jim, it's okay, it'll get better. What I needed was the truth. And this is what my friend said to me. He says, are you sure the anger and frustration you're feeling is righteous indignation? If it is, I can understand that because the way you were treated were kind of wrong, but I want you to really think about it. Because it sounds to me like you're mostly upset that your ego is getting bruised by the fact that you haven't accomplished in 4 to 5 weeks what some churches have taken 4 to 5 years to do. Right. Ouch. Those were tough words to hear and even tougher words to swallow, but I'll be honest. Can I be honest? Because the word is that one of the things that you guys like most about this church is our honesty here. My friend was right. I had to swallow my pride and admit I was more. Now, I didn't start off this way. But as time went on, I got more interested in not giving those other pastors the I told you so's that they were looking for than just simply focusing on what it was that God called me to do, which is lead this church. Pride, folks. I confess this to you because I always said one thing, and I'm sure I've told a lot of you guys this before, and if you haven't heard me say this, you're hearing it now. I don't tolerate hypocrisy in my church. That is the one thing I do not permit. I'll tolerate you coming in here straight from the bar. Just tell me you came straight from the bar. Because I'm okay with that. We're all human beings. We all fall. We all stumble. So I don't get up here week after week and try to pretend, put on my Jesus smile and try to pretend like I'm a perfectly holy saint when I'm just as bad of a sinner as everybody else in this room. How bad of a sinner I am sometimes. But the one thing that your pastor does not want to do is end up like the kings that we read about in the Bible, in the Old Testament particularly. If you have your Bible and you look through the book 1 Samuel, you're going to read about a character named Saul. Saul was the first king of Israel. The people loved him. He was chosen by the people. He was like The Bible says that he was tall, he was handsome, he was charismatic, he was a great leader. He was, everything that every person in the country wanted as a leader. And they chose him unanimously. But the problem was with Saul was that he became so proud of the things that he accomplished, God had to cut him down a peg. In fact, his pride slowly turned to bitterness, because when God saw how proud he was getting and said, look, we're not going to tolerate this pride for long, Saul. You're going to, David is going to take your place. He became angry at David. We know he chased him through the wilderness. He used to chuck spears at his head. Literally, David would be sitting there playing music, and Saul would pick up a spear and throw it at him, stick it into the wall behind him. And then Saul, the final act came when Saul, who goes out and he conquers, and he drives back the Philistines, or one of the armies that he was fighting. He drives them out, and God says, you don't take any of the spoils, you destroy it all, you destroy the enemy, you destroy the town, you kill all the cattle, you do it, you don't take anything. Saul's like, no, I'm king, man, I'm the man, I'm the king, I'm going to prove I'm better than David, I'm going to prove I'm the top dog. So when he wins the battle, first thing he does is he takes the best spoils, he keeps the best for himself, and then he goes and he erects monuments to himself instead of erecting an altar to God who gave him the victory. God wasn't going to put up with that. So through Samuel, he told Saul, he says, that's it, I'm done with you. I'm taking the kingdom out of your hands, and I'm now giving it to David. He's going to take over for you. Well, of course, Saul didn't like this, and he got even more arrogant and more bitter and thought he was going to, do some things, and he ends up getting killed in the end. But Saul's not the only one. If you go back to the book of Daniel, we see about another great king. We know that this guy historically exists. A guy named Nebuchadnezzar, the first king of Babylon. Most historians call him the first world conqueror, because he was the first Alexander the Great, the first Attila the Hun, the first Marcus Antiochus, who went out and conquered the known world through the kingdom of Babylon. Now, through Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar started to learn how to have a little faith in God. But there came a time at the end of his reign in the book of Daniel where it says that Nebuchadnezzar was out on his balcony and he was looking out over the kingdom. And he was just full of himself. It says he just looked back and he surveyed and he was so proud and he's patting himself on the back that he had conquered the known world. And once again, God steps in and says, oh, I'm going to cut you down a notch. I don't tolerate prideful people. Tells Saul, or the second time it says, it tells Nebuchadnezzar at that moment, he says, because you have become so proud, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to humble you. About as humble as a person can get. You're going to spend 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar, oh great king, you're going to spend 7 years wandering around in the wilderness, living like an animal and eating grass. Now, according to Daniel, that says that's what happened to him until God restored him. But I should also be of note to point out that archaeologists who study Babylonian culture, they've discovered the libraries of Babylon, and within those libraries, they found that during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, he was very meticulous about keeping daily records of his reign and all the doings in the kingdom. Except for a certain 7-year period that was towards the end of his reign when there's no records to be found. Wonder why? So let's not make any mistake here, folks, okay? God does not put up with the pride. Because pride, there's something very unique. What the heck is going on? Why did my thing do that? Maybe if I didn't leave my email open, that wouldn't happen. Okay. Mike, you remind me to cut that from the tape later.
Sure.
All right. We know God opposes the proud, but there's a reason for this. It's because pride, unlike most other sins, there's something special about it. Now, don't get me wrong. Sin is sin, and all sin leads to death, but There's something about pride. Something unique about it. One of the unique things about it is one could even say that pride is actually the father of most other sins. Sins like greed, selfishness, neglect, slander, gossip, adultery, idolatry, envy, jealousy, wrath. All stem from that one sin, pride. Matter of fact, pride is actually the first known sin to be committed in biblical history. Anybody want to take a guess who committed it? Anybody?
Eve.
Who? Eve? Nope.
Cain.
Before Eve.
Oh, before Adam.
Satan.
Oh,
Isaiah 14, 12 through 14
Serpent.
says this.
Genesis 1:17.
How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will make myself like the Most High. You guys see a little repeating phrase in that, particularly towards the end? I will. I will, I will, I will, I will. Pride. That is the sin that got Satan thrown out of heaven because pride told him he was better than God and he could set himself above God. Now listen, here's the thing about pride too. Pride is not only the parent of many other sins and sinful hearts and attitudes, but there comes a couple of certain dangers that only come with pride. The first one is this. Pride will keep you from seeking or accepting help when you need it. How many people here have been in a bad situation, and I'll be the first to admit it, and we go, I'm not asking for help because I do not want to give those people the I told you so moments. Am I the only one? All right, we got a few honest people here. We don't want to give the I told you so moments. We don't want to appear weak. We don't want to appear inept. We don't want to defeat the expectations that our friends have, our families have, our peers have. So we say nothing. Look, my dad used to have a saying. He used to tell me, and when he knew I needed help, but I was too proud to ask, he'd tell me, go take pride down to the bank and see what you can get for it. Now swallow your pride and take this money and go pay your rent. But there comes an even greater danger with pride. Pride makes you think that you are better than you are and can accomplish more than you are able. Let me say that again. Pride will make you think you are better than you are and can accomplish more than you are able. Look at what the Bible says about pride. And this is just a few of the verses. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. That's Proverbs 11:2. A man's pride brings him low, but a man with a lowly spirit gains honor. That's Proverbs 29:23. Pride only breeds quarrels, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. That's Proverbs 13:10. In his pride, the wicked does not seek him. In all his thoughts, there is no room for God. That's Psalm 10:4. And finally, though the Lord is on high, he looks upon the lowly, but the proud he knows from afar. What does that mean? That means a humble person, a humble spirit. God says, come here, you big old humble lug. Let me give you a noogie. But he says, you proud people, you go stand over there. Because you don't even have room in your own thoughts for him. Pride can be dangerous. So dangerous, in fact, that it not only blinds us to the disasters that we might head for, because we all know pride comes before what?
Fall.
The fall. But it also keeps us blind even to its own existence. See, most people who engage in a sin like drunkenness, now again, nothing wrong with having a beer or two. There's a difference between having a drink and being a drunkard. One's okay, the other's not, in God's eyes. But even a drunkard knows, most of the time, I'm a drunk. Somebody who goes and steals stuff knows they're out stealing stuff. A person who is engaging in sexual immorality knows they're engaging in sexual sins. They just don't care. But pride hides itself. Because we're too proud to admit we even have a problem with pride. So here's the question. How do you know if you suffer from pride? As always, great question. I'm glad you asked. Now, I know a lot of you guys take these tests on Facebook. Answer 15 questions and see if you survive a horror movie, or answer 10 questions and find out what kind of superhero powers you might have. So here we go. Let's not be too proud to take this test. Let's see how you do. Here's 15 questions. Rate yourself. Here's number 1. How well do you take correction from multiple sources? If one person tells you you're drunk, you might blow them off. But if the whole bar is telling you you're drunk, it's time to go home. How well do you take correction from multiple sources? This is what God says, Proverbs 12:15. The way of the fool seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. A fool will argue with everybody. A wise person will listen. Number 2, how often do you take on tasks with little to no knowledge or experience? In other words, how often do you rip open the back of your television to fix the problem when you don't have a clue how that thing is put together? Again, God says this: a wise person is hungry for knowledge, while a fool feeds on trash. In other words, a wise person will know what they don't know, and they will have the wisdom to go ask. Number 3, how often do you get angry when somebody does things differently than you do? This is my way or the highway syndrome. Okay, just because you choose path A and they choose path B, if both paths end at C, let them go down path B. Proverbs 26:12. Have you seen a man who seems to himself to be wise? There is more hope for the foolish than for him. How do you know your way is better? Have you even tried path B? There's number 4. When working with others, how important is it that your ideas are acted on? And again, this isn't saying, we all like to be heard. We like to know, hey, we got an opinion. Opinions are like what? We all have them. And don't shout it out. We're on camera and we are a church. We all have opinions. We want our opinions to be heard. We want to feel like we matter. What we say matters. But how important is it to be acted on? If you throw out an idea and the committee goes, well, think about that, but then they don't do it, I'm not dealing with those people ever again. That's pride. Number 5, how often do you celebrate others' achievements? When that guy you don't really like at work gets a raise, or that girl you really don't like at work gets a raise, do you say, hey, good job? Or do you go, I hate him, I just really hate him, I deserve that money, not them, I deserve that promotion, not them? Paul, when talking about love in 1 Corinthians 13:6, says this: love does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Love celebrates. Number 6, how often do you blame failures or problems on others? This didn't work because Heaven's Edge would have been a super mega church by now if those other pastors just would have. Yeah, we've all played the blame game. Guilty. Luke 6:37, we all know this one. I don't know if we've ever applied it in this sense, but I think it fits. Do not judge others, for you will be judged yourself. Do not condemn others, or it will all come back against you. Forgive others, and you will be forgiven. You notice that last one, forgive others, and you will be forgiven? Think about how that's worded for a second. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Wait, you mean I got to act first? Yep. I'm just a pastor. Take it up with God. It's His word. Here's number 7. How often do you compare your possessions to other people's? And that's good or bad. Hey, I got the nice new Harley, man. That dude's driving a little rinky-dink Yamaha over there. Or how about you're the one driving the rinky-dink Yamaha thinking you deserve the brand new Fat Boy Harley? Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. Neon sign dummy proof. Don't compare what you have to what the Joneses have next door. That is pride. Because if you're looking at anything you got on this earth in comparison to other people, God says don't be looking that direction. You need to be looking up, not out. Where are we at? Number 8. How often you get angry when you can't get something you want? Or I like this one. We don't want it. We deserve it. I worked hard. I deserve that raise. I deserve that promotion. I've driven a hoopty for the last 20 years. I deserve that brand new truck. God says you deserve the cross. He says, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Did you get that? Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. He says, don't worry about all that stuff you think you want, you think you need, you think you deserve. He says, you focus your attention on me, and you'll get all the things that you really want and need in this life. Where am I at? Well, number 9. Talked about this one a little bit earlier. How long do you struggle with problems before asking for help? When you get into a little trouble, do you go, hey, I need a little help with this? Or do you wait until you're knee-deep in dog muck or up to here in it? Because here's the issue. Sometimes, and I've tried to explain this to all my kids, says, I love you. You're my kids. I will always do what I can do to help you. But sometimes you guys put yourselves in positions I can't help you. I don't have the resources to. So do me a favor, listen to wisdom now before you go do something stupid that I can't help you out of. And God says, Matthew, and this is Jesus speaking, He says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. He says, all you got to do is swallow your pride, humble yourselves and ask, and we'll get you the help you need. Don't wait until it's too late. Number 10. Sorry, Arthur. How much do you focus on past accomplishments instead of future goals? This is what I call the Al Bundy syndrome. How many people remember Married with Children? All right, good. The younger ones are like, Al Bundy, who's Al Bundy? Ed O'Neill used to play football for YSU. All right. There was an old television show on. What did Al Bundy used to do? His life was a wreck. It was a total disaster. He sold shoes for a living. And what did he do all the time? Reveled in his glory days about when he scored the winning touchdown for the high school football game. That was his big accomplishment in life. That was 30 years ago for him. And he's still living in that moment. Some of you guys are still living in those moments too. The days when you might have been up on stage, or the days when you might have, accomplished some, you made the game-winning tackle, or the game spiked the football in the end zone and took the team to the playoff. That's the past. God says in Ecclesiastes 7:10, say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask that. About number 11. This is kind of the reverse. How much do you focus on future goals instead of present needs? But God said to him, Luke 12:20, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you, and now who will own what you have prepared? How much time do you spend daydreaming about getting back up on stage or wherever you were at, instead of actually taking care of the business that's at hand? Don't let your pride send you into the future, because here's what God's saying in that passage. You ain't going far enough into the future. You might be looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. God's looking eternally down the road. He says your plans for 20 years from now ain't going to happen, because tonight's your night. Who's going to get all that stuff you prepared now? Here's number 12. And I know people like this. I can be a person like this. How much of your conversations actually focus more on you than on other people? In other words, how much talking you do versus how much listening you do. And when you are talking, are you talking about them, or are you talking about you? And talking about your life, and how great and wonderful everything is for you? Or are you saying, hey, how's your life going? What can I do to make it a little bit better? What can I do to show you God's love? What can I do to be a servant to you? For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. I don't think that one needs explanation. Number 13, how much credit do you give those who helped you succeed? Now, I've said it, in this church, I recognize my leaders. I could not be here. This church could not exist if it was just me. I need my wife's support. I need Ron's support. Mike, what he does. John, people who are joining us. If this was on me, first off, I wouldn't succeed. And second, I'm not sure I would really want to succeed. Because I have enough pressure dealing with just the stuff that I have to deal with. I don't want to have to deal with coming up with the worship music and learning to play guitar to do it too. Render to all what is due them. Tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom is due, fear to whom fear is due, and honor to whom honor is due. Romans 13:7. You heard me say, thank you, Darlene. Thank you, John. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Cindy. Caitlin, Mackenzie, everybody who came out. Because if it was just me out there at Pink Lemonade, this goes along with it. How often do you delegate responsibility to others? Do you got to do it yourself so that the job gets done right? Guilty. You do it yourself so the job gets done right. Well, what happens when you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 different things you got to do? I can't lead a worship team. I can't lead a recovery ministry and lead this church all at the same time. That's why Ron is my right-hand man. Mike is Ron's right-hand man. Darlene is doing it. Shelly supports me. Because I can't be there to do it all. Exodus 18:17. This is Jethro talking to Moses. He says, the thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. I preach a month on Sundays on that. But for this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Now, Moses was leading a nation. I'm leading a small group of people. And I can't do it by myself. So I have to designate jobs. And then I have to have the humility to back off. Don't get me wrong, I make my opinion known. Ron will tell you, we've had discussions over what to do with the praise team, how to put it together. But when we disagree, guess who wins that argument? It's not your pastor. It's your worship director. Because I have to trust him. I need his help. And here's the final question. How willing are you to accept tasks that you consider beneath yourself? Not my job. It's somebody else's job.
Not my job description.
Yep. Not my job description. Below my pay grade. If you have said any one of these things, you are guilty. Guilty. And being found in the appearance of man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. The God of the universe, the Almighty, the Shekinah, Jehovah Jireh, whatever name you have for him, the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, stepped out of heaven, became a man, lived a servant's life, washing the stinky feet of the disciples, and was obedient unto death. For you, for me, for every other puffed up, proud, too good for it person on the face of this planet. Well, I got some change in my pocket. It's not much, but I'd be willing to wager it that I'm not the only person up here that went through this questionnaire and about 4 or 5 of these things said, yep, guilty. Yep, that's me. I told you I started off the game by saying, guys, your pastor suffers from a chronic sin. Chronic sin called pride. If you too suffer from the same affliction, and you're like me, and at least 4 or 5, I don't know, maybe you guys are 10 out of 15, maybe you're 14 out of 15, then I want to highly recommend that you guys come up here when I open the altar up later for prayer. Don't let your pride get in the way. Because I'm going to stand here in front of you on camera for the whole world to see. People watching us on Facebook and YouTube. And thanks to Pastor Brian Smith's shout out, we got another 30 followers from all over the country who have the opportunity to see this. Mostly, I need you guys to pray for me too. Because we made it clear, God opposes the proud. Don't make a mistake on this. The eyes of the arrogant man will be humbled, and the pride of men brought low. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day. The Lord Almighty planned it to bring low the pride of all glory and to humble all who are renowned on the earth. I will punish the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins, to the arrogance of the haughty, and will humble the pride of the ruthless. Does this require explanation, or do we get a pretty good idea of what God's saying there? Because that's pretty neon sign dummy proof to me. God gives us a choice. Sort of. But it's not the choice we think sometimes. Romans 14:11 says this, "For it is written, As I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God." Some people's knees will bow. Some people's tongues confess. It says every knee is going to bow. Every tongue is going to confess. So that's not the choice he gives us. The choice he gives us is we can go there willingly, recognizing him as Lord of Lords, King of Kings, Savior, Redeemer, Almighty. Or we could wait for his plans to come to fruition. And speaking as one who has been humbled by God many of times in my life, you'd think I've learned my lesson. It is not a pleasant experience. I'm not saying it's necessarily the case. There might be a lot of reasons why you're going through some of the things you're going through. But the first thing I would check before moving on is how proud you are. How'd you do on the test?